This is the Comics Alternative Interviews, a conversation with Peter Hogan. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative Interviews. I'm Derek, one of the two guys with PhDs talking about comics. And today I'm pleased to have on the show Peter Hogan. The first issue in his and Steve Parkhouse's new Resident Alien storyline, The Man with No Name, will be released on September 14th from Dark Horse Comics. But before we get to that interview, I want to let all of you know that this episode of the Comics Alternative Interviews is brought to you by the wonderful folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There, you're going to find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts are 20 to 35% off the cover price, and every single month you're going to find some unbelievable specials. Sometimes those specials will be at 45% off the cover price, sometimes at 50% off of the cover, but often you can find discounts that are more impressive than that. And in fact, if you go to dcbservice.com right now, you'll find a whole line of Peter Hogan comics at great discounts. There's issue number 3 of the new Resident Alien series, The Man with No Name, at 40% off the cover price. You can also get 40% off of all 3 Resident Alien trade collections, Welcome to Earth, Suicide Blonde, and the Sam Hain Mystery. You can also find 40% off of one of Peter's other books, King's Road, the trade paperback. You'll find great discounts at Discount Comic Book Service, so go to their website and see what they have for the month of September. That's dcbservice.com. Go there for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your comics there, please be sure to send them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you. I've been reading Resident Alien since it was first serialized in Dark Horse Presents issues number 4 and 6 in 2011. Its writer, Peter Hogan, gives its extraterrestrial protagonist an empathic treatment, and the mysteries that make up each narrative arc are episodic intrigues that all feed into a larger ongoing storyline. Over the past 5 years, these Resident Alien stories have appeared in 3 miniseries and then trade collections, beginning with the original storyline completed in 2012, Suicide Blonde in 2013, and then last year's Sam Hain Mystery. Next week, we'll see the release of the first issue of the latest installment, The Man with No Name, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to have the series writer on the Comics Alternative to talk about the title. So without further ado, let's listen to my conversation with Peter Hogan. I'm here with Peter Hogan. He is the writer of the Resident Alien series from Dark Horse Comics, and in fact, the next narrative arc, The Man with No Name, begins later this month. Peter, welcome to the show.
Hi. Good to be here.
Now, I've been reading the Resident Alien series for a while, and you first started in Dark Horse Presents in, I think it was 2011. Is that correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And how you started, and I think you did for the first few narrative arcs, was that you included short bits in Dark Horse Presents, like 1 or 2 story fragments, and then collected those later in 0 issues, and that started off the narrative arc. So with the original series, with the next storyline, Suicide Blonde, and then the third one, the Sam Hain Mystery, they all began in Dark Horse Presents. But
That's right.
Are you doing something similar with this new title?
No, we're diving straight in with issue 1.
And what went behind the decision to do that, to forego Dark Horse Presents and just start with issue 1 of Resident Alien, The Man with No Name?
I think I'm not sure. I think it might have had something to do with the fact that in the past people got a bit confused as to what an issue 0 was. So you had people out there who had managed to miss the appearance in Dark Horse Presents and then not get issue 0 because they didn't know what it was or didn't know about it, and assume that issue number 1 was in fact issue number 1. So it was all a bit confusing, and I think this time, I think for simplicity's sake, they decided to do, and also by now we've got enough of a history that I guess they think people know us, and if they want to read it, they're going to read it. So.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, that very first issue, or the number 1 issue of the first narrative arc of Resident Alien, you even indicated on the first page, you need to read issue 0.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to give readers a sense of context. So now, how did this come about? And when I'm asking that, I mean, a couple things. One, how did you and the artist, Steve Parkhouse, come up with this idea? And then along with that, how did it turn out to where you started in Dark Horse Presents?
Okay. Well, Steve I've known for a long time. I was his editor at one point, and going way back, I was a big fan of the Bo Jeffries saga, so that's kind of why I signed him up to do a strip in an anthology that I was editing. And then later on, after I became a comics writer, I was doing Vertigo approached me to do some stories for The Dreaming, which was the Sandman spin-off title. Mm-hmm. And they asked me who I wanted for an artist, and I said Steve. So we did one 4-issue story together for that, and then another one-off issue later on. And basically, I've always loved Steve's stuff, and I wanted to work with him again. So, and we had a couple of things that we tried over the years that didn't get off the ground. And then I was talking to him one day and said, "Look, let's have another go at doing something. What would you like to draw?" And he said he really wanted to do something involving aliens. So. Basically, I had half an idea up my sleeve already, so I went away and I thought about it some more, and this is kind of what we came up with. And to answer the second part of your question, what we did was we did a proposal and about 6 pages, I think, of script and art, and sent those into various publishers, and it ended up with Dark Horse, and Mike Richardson was in the process of trying to relaunch Dark Horse Presents. And he happened to see the artwork and really liked it. And so we had a conference call with Mike, and he basically said, I'd like it to do this, this, and this, indicating the direction he wanted it to go in, which was slightly different from the direction that we'd originally planned. But I was like, okay, fine, let's give it a go. So that's what happened, and we kind of we trailered it in Dark Horse Presents. I think we were a few issues into the relaunch of Dark Horse Presents. I think we were in issue 4 or something that we started out in.
Yeah, I think it was 4 is where you started.
Yeah, but it was always planned to be, not just the series, but, provided, it went down okay, it was always planned to be a long-term thing. Partly because I think because Mike saw the potential in it for, not just a long-term comic, but also the possibility that, it might end up getting filmed at some point.
Oh, I mean, so I hadn't even thought about the possibilities for cinema, which is kind of strange because when I think of Resident Alien, I tend to think of a lot of the police procedurals or the detective shows that I grew up watching on television during the 70s and 80s.
Yes, no, I think if it... well, in fact, when I started writing it, I hadn't sort of set out I hadn't set out with a TV show in mind, but once I started writing it, it seemed to me that it felt like a TV show. And that's actually more likely than a film. I mean, Hollywood takes forever and a day to make up its mind about anything, so it's still kind of up in the air. But I think there's a good chance of it happening.
Okay, so now you mentioned that in your conversations with Steve, he had said that he really wanted to do a story with an alien. So why the alien story with the twist of it being a mystery procedural detective story?
Well, that really came about because the one thing that Steve and I felt right at the start was that we didn't want to do a story where the alien was the monster or the bad guy, because that's what everybody had been doing for decades, pretty much. I mean, from Alien and Predator on down. So we wanted to do something different, something where the alien was actually basically just a nice guy who was stranded here and killing time waiting for a rescue ship that might or might not ever come. So in the meantime, it occurred to me that just for the sake of his own sanity, he might get interested in the whole area of crime and actually solving crime just as a way of staying sane. But when the story starts out, he's very much just keeping a low profile and hiding out from the world and trying not to be involved with anybody at all. And then, you've read it, so events transpire to kind of lure him out and make him become a part of this small town community.
Yeah, and one of the things I appreciate about this title is that the alien, who's going by the name of Dr. Vandenspiegel.
Yeah.
And by the way, why that name?
Basically, I had a Dutch friend whose name is Harry.
Okay.
And he just kind of popped into my head, and in the spirit of synchronicity, I thought, okay, well, we'll go along with this, but I can't give him the same surname because poor Harry would never forgive me. So I started looking at Dutch surnames, and Van der Spiegel actually means, or Van der Spiegel probably. Mm-hmm. I don't know. We'll have to actually ask a Dutch person how it's pronounced, but it actually translates as looking glass. And I just thought that was perfect. He's kind of the mirror of us.
Yeah. Like I was saying, where we have, Harry van der Spiegel, throughout the story, there's something about solving mysteries that attracts him. And it's something that it's difficult to put your finger on. It's difficult for him to put his finger on because, as you pointed out, despite his avid reluctance at first to get involved in a murder mystery, he's drawn to it, and that's what keeps him in the game. That's why he doesn't retreat, is because he comes to love mysteries. In fact, he begins consuming them.
Yeah.
And that becomes in fact, a major premise for that third narrative arc, the Sam Hain mystery.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, again, that kind of comes out of a real life thing that somebody once told me when I was working as a journalist, which was he just said, if you ever go to an office and you're dealing with the receptionist or the reception desk or whatever, have a look, if you can, at the surroundings, and you will find that there will be either a murder mystery or there will be a true crime kind of novel, true crime book or magazine or whatever will be somewhere near about. It's just one of those things that it seems to tap into some kind of part of human nature. People are interested in the extremes of the bad guys, I guess.
Now, we were talking a moment ago about television. Were there any television shows that you had in mind when you guys developed Resident Alien?
Yeah, well, the only thing, and it was, I can't speak for Steve, but it was kind of in the back of my head were things like The Man Who Fell to Earth, the movie, and the old My Favorite Martian TV show. which I watched when I was a kid. I haven't seen it since, but I always loved it. The guy that, the idea that there could be a Martian living next door to you. And other than that, I think in some ways, the murder mystery aspect of it is quite old-fashioned. I mean, it's not exactly Murder, She Wrote, but there's elements of Rex Stout and Agatha Christie in there. And that seems to kind of fit with the small town setting. I mean, I think, these days it's much more fashionable to have these forensic, CSI type things. But that just didn't seem to sort of, marry up with the rest of what we were doing. So.
Yeah, now you mentioned My Favorite Martian. That's definitely one of the television shows that I thought of when I first started reading this. But another one that came to mind even before that was Quincy.
Yeah, well, I'd certainly watched Quincy back in the day. I hadn't actually consciously absorbed it, but, he's kind of, the rough diamond maverick kind of guy. So
yeah, and a doctor.
And a doctor. Yes, that's true. I hadn't thought of that. I don't know how much of any of this stuff is an influence. Everything is. I mean, Bob Dylan had a quote once, and he just which was, if you open your eyes and your ears, you're influenced. And I think that's true. You can never get away from it on some level.
Mm. Now, you were mentioning a moment ago that when you and Steve proposed this project, you thought of it as something that would be this longer, ongoing narrative. So even from the very beginning, you didn't think that this would be, let's say, just one short 4-issue miniseries, and then you're done with it.
No, because, well, apart from anything else, that would be kind of a waste of the character and his story. I mean, one of the things that we've done is that, whereas each miniseries has kind of, the mystery aspect is complete in that miniseries. Harry's overarching story, just rolls on from series to series. And will do kind of indefinitely until who knows, until the ship turns up or not. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I appreciate about this series is that even though it does remind me of much, crime television programs, procedurals, it's different from, let's say, Quincy or Law and Order in that every episode is almost entirely self-contained. There's a mystery, there's the working towards solving that mystery, and then the resolution at the end. And that's it. And usually what happens with one episode doesn't connect in any, at least overt way, to any other episode. Mm. But in Resident Alien, and again, to make another television reference, it's like The Fugitive, that each story or each narrative arc is kind of self-contained to a point, but there's a larger overarching story kind of linking all of these. Like, for instance, will the fugitive ever be caught? Will he find the guy with one arm? And so the mysteries that are set up, the overarching long-term mysteries in Resident Alien, I think first and foremost, will he be discovered by the authorities? Because we saw those guys from the very beginning.
Yeah.
But
that's a sort of ongoing ingredient,
right?
But I try to move that along as slowly as possible.
Yeah, and quite effectively. But then another one I think that's newer to the series is Harry's past life on the alien planet, and I think we're given a little more of an introduction to that life, what it might have been in this most recent issue that will be coming out next week, Resident Alien: The Man with No Name.
Yeah, that's true. You'll see a few more glimpses about Harry's backstory. I think there's a lot of things that have been kind of, bubbling away in the background that will, I won't say they'll be answered, but you'll find out more about them in this series.
Okay, so for our listeners who, let's say, may be familiar with some of the earlier Resident Alien stories, or even those who maybe haven't gotten into the property yet at all, how would you describe this first issue of The Man with No Name?
I'm going to have to try and remember what's in it now. it's kind of it moves along very slowly. I mean, I think probably when I wrote it, I was assuming it was going to be in Dark Horse Presents again, and so it's kind of got that feel of, there's bits and pieces there. They're all kind of like an introduction to the main event. So, and in terms of the crime, it kind of what happens is that there's something mysterious going on in one part of town. There's a mysterious smell, and they don't know what's causing it. And right at the end of the story, you discover that basically the phone rings and there's a major fire going on, and it's in that part of town. So that's going to lead up to the discovery, basically, of a body that's connected with a fire, and the fire seems to be connected with possibly a drug ring. And Harry's kind of caught in the middle of it, trying to figure out some of the mysteries of what's going on. But more to the point, I think that in this series, there's a lot of finally dealing with the fact that, Asta, who's the nurse that he works with, and her father both kind of know who and what he is. And so that's going to be coming more to the fore, as well as finding out, what has actually, who the guy that dies, who we don't know anything about his identity, who he is, and the connection with, drugs or not, and the whole crime aspect of it. So, and in the middle of all of that, you'll see a little bit more to do with Harry's home planet and what actually happened to make him crash here, and a few other things as well.
Mm-hmm. And also in this first issue of The Man with No Name, it seems as if the authorities, maybe without them realizing it, are getting very close to Harry.
Yes, so it would seem. Well, I mean, they're getting closer than they were, certainly. But again, it's not something that's going to happen in a hurry. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think in the... I don't want to give too much away. Right. just read it and find out.
Right. And this is where the character of Asta comes in, and she became much more prominent, let's say, in her, I guess, relationship with Harry definitely in Suicide Blonde, but with her jacket in the Sam Hain mystery. And now this new story is following up on that. So tell me a little bit about the evolution of the character Asta and how her growing importance has changed your storytelling.
Well, I think the thing is that, it's... I mean, when I was doing the first series, I've still kind of got a voiceover from Harry. Every once in a while we're privy to his thoughts. Mm-hmm. But at the start, that was pretty much all we had as an insight into, who and what he was. But in order for him to develop, in order for him to have somebody to discuss his whole sort of personal life, we needed somebody else, and Asta was kind of created for that reason. I mean, Harry's got friends. He's got, he gets on well with Mike, the police guy, and Bert, the mayor. But he's never going to tell them anything about, who he is. And what happens with Asta is that she could kind of see him. I mean, it was blurry and it was weird, but, she knew that he was different. And her father is kind of a Native American shaman, so he's got his own take on the whole thing. And ultimately, these are the people that Harry will be able to, confide in, lean on, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Now, we should point out for those who are unfamiliar with the series that, you spell out in that first story arc that Harry is able to mask his appearance with almost everyone he encounters, with all Earthlings, except a very small minority who are immune to his abilities to mask himself. And we learned fairly early on that Asta may be one of those people who is immune to his masking abilities. Because, as you point out, she feels things a little blurry whenever she's looking at the doctor and is not sure why. She goes to the eye doctor, finds out that nothing's wrong with her eyes, and then she talks with her father, the shaman, as you pointed out, and then that leads us to assume, well, she can see him even literally in ways that others can't.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to do with the series right from the start was portray Harry as an alien throughout. So you've got this thing that I think a lot of people like, is the fact that you see him in ordinary everyday settings, and as looking the way that he looks, and nobody's paying a blind bit of notice to it. And that came about. I think I wrote it in the introduction to one of the books. That came about from some 1950s photos I saw of Elvis Presley before he became like really famous. And so he's like in a railway station or a diner or whatever, and he just looks like a Martian compared to everybody else, and nobody's paying a blind bit of notice to him.
Wow.
And I just thought that was an incredible image. So that kind of grew from that. But obviously, if most people can't see him, then just for the purposes of kind of narrative growth, you've got to have some people that can.
Right. Now, we have encountered one other person who is able to see him for what he truly is. And that is the little girl. Oh, God, what is her name?
Honey.
Honey, yes. And in fact, Honey being able to see him, I think that became the cover image on issue number 3 of the Samhain mystery.
Yeah. It did, the last issue.
Yeah, where she draws the doctor, and she draws him, though, with an alien head, and others just assume that, oh, this is a kid's imagination.
Yeah. Cute kid.
Yeah. So will we see, without giving too much away, more of Honey and her maybe unconscious ability to see through Harry as this next story arc develops?
I don't know how much of it we use up in this story arc. It's certainly going to occur in the future. It's going to be an ongoing thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So you already have this new storyline, The Man with No Name, mapped out. And how many issues will this be? Will this be 4?
It'll be 4, yeah.
Okay, so it'll be the same length as the others, except no 0 issue.
No, just 1 to 4.
Yeah. And, it's kind of a side thing. I've always been suspicious of 0 issues. I mean, the very logic of a 0 issue is, people in comics believe it to be something. It's like, okay, a 0 issue is where you set up the premise and all the background, everything you need to know to really get into the series. Well, in my book, that's the first issue.
Yeah, no, mine too. I mean, I think it didn't really seem to do anything except confuse people. So, there you go.
Yeah. So, we have The Man with No Name. How many other stories do you and Steve have, if not in the, that you're currently working on, then do you project out as of now?
As of now. Right. Okay. Well, series 5 is written. Steve will be starting to draw that probably in about a month's time. And I kind of know most of what's going to happen in Series 6. And beyond that, I know kind of bits and pieces. I know bits and pieces of the big story. And, we'll flesh that out as we get closer to it.
Yeah, because I was curious how far out you as the writer are working or thinking through this series.
I'm usually... Well, like I say, I'm usually like two series ahead of the readers, I think, is probably, the easiest way of putting it.
Okay. Do you see any potential danger, or maybe not danger, but drawbacks to thinking so far ahead of what the reader knows?
I think it's kind of unavoidable. I mean, there might be drawbacks to it, but I think one of the things that is a little bit difficult is that, you're a long way ahead of reader reaction. So if the readers suddenly go, oh, this bit I don't like, or this bit confuses me, it's kind of difficult to react to that in a practical way.
Now, have there been times with either Resident Alien or your previous comics where you've gotten certain reader reaction and you've wanted to readjust your initial story ideas?
I think the trouble is that you can't. It's one of those things that you're kind of aware of, but you can't actually cater to it particularly. I mean, it's one of the things. I mean, one of the things that I've had a lot, and from reviewers, which is I find surprising, is that you very often get a thing where it's almost like they don't do any homework on the thing. It's like they go into it going, well, it says number 1 on the cover, so and I don't understand what's going on, and you think, well, you could do a bit of research and figure out that it isn't actually the first issue. It's the first issue of the 3rd series or whatever. But even then, you get people, you'll get some people that will say that, and other people will go, well, I understood it perfectly. It's the first issue I read, and I picked it up, and reading it on the run, and I understood everything. So there'll always be some people that don't understand stuff, and there'll be people that do. And I think it's a mistake to kind of like try and write down to people, and that's something that I've always avoided. It's like, I'm trying to do the most kind of grown up, proper, intelligent storytelling that I can do. And it's up to the readers to try and keep up. I'm not going to cater to anybody.
Mm-hmm. Now, and we were talking about the way that this has been serialized, and I'm curious, had you thought before you found a home in Dark Horse Presents that this may be something that you guys would create as an ongoing series, not a series of narrative arcs, but like beginning with Resident Alien issue number 1 and then work toward issue 10, 20, 30?
I don't know. I mean, basically, I think what we had in mind when we started was that, that we would do a mini-series and kind of see how it went. So if anything, Dark Horse's reaction was better than we could have hoped for, really. Beyond that, Steve isn't, Steve's actually, he's doing everything on this apart from the writing. He's doing, penciling, inking, colors, letters. He's a real kind of one-man band on this. But that means that it moves slowly. And I'm quite happy with that because, in a way it kind of keeps the quality up. But I think if we were on a monthly treadmill, then there would have had to have been other writers, other artists involved. And I think actually that the writing would probably have suffered as a result. I don't think, I kind of understand the logic of monthly comics, but it's not always for the best. I mean, sometimes, limited series have produced the high spots of the whole medium, whether it's a graphic novel or a 4-part prestige series or whatever. That's what Watchmen was, and Dark Knight, and all the things that people think of as being, the high spots of the entire medium.
Mm-hmm. And when I was asking that question, I had in mind another Dark Horse series, Hellboy. And it seems to me that the publishing model of titles like Hellboy, and again, Dark Horse, is that instead of coming out with this monolithic ongoing series, you tell your story in different 4 to 6 issue arcs, and then you tell your initial story, you give it a little breathing space, then you tell your next story, and then it's a little breathing space. And that seems to have worked really well for Hellboy and the world that now has become, Magnola's. But that's the model that seems to be working really well with Resident Alien.
Yeah, no, I think Hellboy is kind of the obvious thing that we're following, really, in terms of schedules and formats and all the rest of it. And like I say, I'm fine with that. I think one of the things that we're doing is that we are, if you like, building a library. I mean, we're now at the point where hopefully new readers can pick up on series 4, and if they like it, they can go out and buy 3 trade paperbacks, and catch up on the backstory. So yeah, I mean, I'm pleased with the way it's going.
Now, you mentioned the paperbacks, the trade collections of the various storylines. The first Resident Alien, and then Suicide Blonde, the Sam Hain mystery, and now this new one, The Men with No Name. Now, each story arc is collected in a trade. Are there going to be any plans to collect the individual trades into a larger hardback collection?
It's kind of occurred to me as a nice fantasy thing that maybe one day we'll do. I think we need a few more trades out there before we start doing that. But yes, no, it would be nice. I mean, it would be nice if one day when we've finished the whole thing, that it ended up in some enormous hardback. That would be nice.
Because I've noticed a lot of publishers are doing that, taking the trades and then, I guess, 1 or 2, putting them together into nice deluxe editions, or Dark Horse calls them the library editions. They've done this with Hellboy, with Goon, and then very recently with the Massive. So I could imagine that this is something that we could see in the future from Dark Horse, Resident Alien, the library edition.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your working relationship with Steve Parkhouse. You told me how you got the premise, the idea for the series going. What is your issue-to-issue relationship? How do you guys coordinate things?
Well, I think it's one of those things where, I've worked with Steve quite a bit, so we kind of know each other and trust each other. And basically we kind of trust each other to get on with it. I mean, once in a while, Steve will say, tell me there's something that he would like to draw, and I try and incorporate that. Other than that, he just lets me get on with it. And when I'm done, I kind of let him get on with it. And it seems to work out okay. In some ways, we've got more of a... I write full script, and I kind of learned from people like Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman. So my scripts tend to be, quite detailed, and a lot of that comes back to the fact that you don't always know who's going to be drawing them. So you're just trying to cover all the bases and give the artist as much information as possible. So I guess with Steve, because I know what he's capable of, and we know the setting and the characters now, so maybe my scripts are a little bit shorter for him than they would be for other people. Other than that, we talk on the phone, not constantly, but once in a while, and I'm actually going to be seeing him this weekend at a convention, but that hardly ever happens. I mean, I think the last time we met in the flesh was about 2 or 3 years ago. So he lives up the other end of the country from me. So,
is there any kind of symbiosis with either the storytelling or the art? In other words, I mean, do you completely write the story and then he illustrates it, or does he have much, if any, input in the story? And then vice versa, do you have or give him much input or suggestions or specific suggestions, or ask him to change the art?
I hardly ever ask Steve to make any alterations. I mean, once in a blue moon maybe, but by and large, like I say, I trust Steve to come up with the goods. And other than that, the stuff that I put into the script is always really just a suggestion. If Steve can find a better way of doing it, then that's fine with me. And sometimes he does. I mean, we did I'm just trying to think of an example. I mean, we have a sequence in this series which involves Harry's spaceship. I won't give too much away, but
this is the new one, right? The new story.
Yeah, in The Man with No Name. Issue, I'm trying to think, 2, 3 could be could be any of them. I can't. And at any rate, so I made some suggestions about what Steve could do, and basically Steve went, "No, I'm going to go in a slightly different direction with this," and fine with me, and it turned out really nice. So,
without giving too much away, what can we expect or roughly look forward to with this 5th storyline, and what might the 5th storyline be called?
The one after this.
Right.
Yeah, the 5th one, without giving out too much away. Well, I'll tell you the title, which kind of tells you a fair amount about it. It's called A Resident... Oh, no, it's not called A Resident. It's called An Alien in New York.
Oh.
And it will involve Harry going to New York, amongst other things. And it's kind of about... It's about a number of different things. It's about... art and creativity, and it's also about what it means to be an immigrant. What it means to look out and see the Statue of Liberty and that be the place that you're heading for, that kind of embodies all your dreams and hopes. And that's all I'm going to tell you.
Okay. That's interesting, because I think the whole idea of the immigrant experience, definitely being an outsider, is baked into this series, and we see this from the very first issues. But what I hear you saying about this 5th storyline, where he's in New York, you're going to be bringing this more to the fore.
Yeah, it's kind of a reflection on. It's about Harry. Yeah, again, it's tricky. I don't want to give too much away, but it's about Harry being forced to think about all of that stuff, really, and by examining, the life of another individual and seeing how that reflects back on his own.
Mm-hmm. And he's someone who does have empathic abilities.
Yes, he is.
So he's like Deanna Troi in Star Trek. To some
Sorry?
degree. He's like Deanna Troi in Star Trek.
Yeah, not quite as cute, but there you go.
Yeah. Okay, so you've been doing your work on Resident Alien for these past several years. Now, do you have any other projects underway or projects in the near future that you're going to be turning to that are not Resident Alien related?
Yeah, I did another series for Dark Horse called King's Road, which is a fantasy story that came out in trade paperback. I'm just trying to think. It came out in bookstores about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and in comic stores probably a few weeks before that. And we're kind of waiting to hear back on the sales front as to how well it did. And if it did well enough, then hopefully we'll get to do another series of that. And beyond that, there's probably not that much I can tell you about. There's a lot of projects that I'm discussing with a lot of different publishers. But it's one of those periods where, it's kind of all out there in the wind, and hopefully some of it will come to earth and, seed and start growing. Mm-hmm. But what it'll be and when it'll be, right this moment, I couldn't tell you.
You mentioned a moment ago that you were going to be meeting Steve at a convention. So where are you going to be, and what other conventions might people where may they be able to find you in the coming months?
In the coming months, well, not many places actually. I did San Diego this year, and the one that I'm going to here in the UK is in Birmingham. And Steve and I and our Dark Horse editor, Philip Simon, will be doing a Resident Alien panel, which who knows? Somebody will film and it'll end up on YouTube. This may happen. Other than that, I'm kind of hunkering down for a bit. I hopefully will be doing at least one American convention next year, but which one I don't know right this minute. So.
Well, Peter, I want to thank you for being on the Comics Alternative and talking with us about the new resident alien title, The Man with No Name. The first issue of that comes out on September 14th. And we have 4 issues. I guess that'll be wrapped up by the end of this year then.
That's right, yeah.
Well, good luck with this, and look forward to seeing how the story turns out.
Yeah, so do I. Well, I mean, I know how the story turns out, but I look forward to seeing how it goes down.
I want to thank Peter Hogan for coming on the Comics Alternative to talk about the new Resident Alien miniseries and sharing his experiences, as well as some of his future plans, in writing his crime-fighting extraterrestrial. And if you want to find out more about the Resident Alien series and do so at great prices, then you need to head on over to the website of our sponsor, Discount Comic Book Service. You can go to dcbservice.com right now and find all of the Resident Alien trade paperbacks, as well as issue number 3 of the latest series, at 40% off of the cover price. And after you do get your dose of Peter Hogan there, get in touch with me and let me know what you think about this interview. If you go to our website, comicsalternative.com, you'll find that you can leave us voice message from the comfort of your own computer or mobile device through SpeakPipe. Or you can call us the old-fashioned way. Our phone number is 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427. You can also email us. We're 2guys at comicsalternative.com, and you can contact me directly at Derek at comicsalternative.com. You can find us all over social media, such as on Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, Google+, Goodreads, Pinterest, and YouTube. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can also find us on TuneIn. You can also listen to the podcast via Spotify, and if you're an Android user, on Google Play Music. But you can find every single one of our episodes, as well as the reviews and the comics-related commentary that we post on our blog, by going to our website, which is comicsalternative.com. Again, I want to thank Peter Hogan for coming onto the show and talking about the new Resident Alien series. And we have a lot of other interviews lined up in the weeks to come, so be sure to check back for those. Until then, I'm Derek, and I'll be talking with you later.